Good evening and welcome to the Livonia Public Schools regular board meeting of April 22nd, 2024. I just want to welcome everybody. We have a full crowd here tonight. It's very exciting. Great things are going to be happening in the next few minutes with our Student Athlete Award, Scholar Athlete, and the Livonia Franklin High School Pom Pom State Champions, both for varsity and JV, are here to join us. I guess I should start. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Bonifield?
Here.
Mrs. Burton?
Here.
Mrs. Frank, absent. Mrs. Jarvis?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Acosta is here. President Bradford?
Here, and we have a quorum. Mr. Johnson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just want to let you know, Superintendent Oquist will be joining us shortly. She has a conflict with another commitment she's attending in the Livonia community, but she will be here shortly. Good evening. If you'd like to follow along with tonight's meeting and you're watching from home, you can go onto the website, the LPS website at www.livoniapublicschools.org. Click on the school board tab, go down to board meeting information, find the meeting agendas, and click on today's date, and you will find our agenda for this evening. If you're joining us here in the boardroom, you can get a copy of that out the door to the left, and on the table there, you'll find a copy of the agenda. If you're here in person this evening and wish to come before the board to speak at audience communications, you may also find a blue slip out on that table located out the doors. Please hand those slips to any board member prior to our audience communications. Tonight is a regular meeting or a voting meeting. If you tuned in to watch us, you may notice that there's not a lot of discussion happening on these items. That's because we've seen and discussed our items multiple times prior to this evening, mainly at our study sessions or our committee of the whole meetings. If you wish to hear more regarding any items on the agenda, excuse me, we ask that you go back and watch the committee of the whole meeting. There you're going to find a much richer discussion and maybe some answers to some of your questions. Our committee of the whole meetings are recorded and can be found on our website via YouTube. One item I would like to briefly mention is one of our community with characters traits, and that is of respect. Our students learn, model, and follow this trait every day at school. Our board also follows and models this important trait here at the table. We do not always agree with one another, and we have a lot of differing opinions at times, but we treat each other with respect for our differences and in the way that we convey them to each other. And you have our word that this board will treat everyone in this room with respect and ask that you do the same for us. Thank you. And with that, we're going to move on to item 3, communications. And I'd like to make a point of privilege this evening. We have a lot of things going on in the district, and so I'd like to ask Mrs. Stacy Jenkins to come up and give us an update on the 2021 bond. If she would do that, we would appreciate it. Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins.
Turn on the, yep, you got it.
Okay.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Hopefully that's, well, I'm not even going to jinx myself. Good evening, President Bradford, members of the board. Tonight, it's my privilege we're going to start up the slideshow, Emily. Thank you. If you have taken a look around our school district at any time during this current school year, you are sure to notice the beautiful physical improvements at many of our schools. It's been a little bit since we recapped the millions of dollars of work that has been done thanks to the voter-approved 2021 bond issue. As a district, we're entering Phase 3 of our bond program, which has already brought some significant improvements to our schools. Tonight, it's my pleasure to recap and highlight some of those projects. And just on this slide, this is part of our bond campaign materials from back in 2021. You see all the check marks there, including projects covered in the $185 million bond, including air conditioning, furniture, technology, media centers, security, STEM, career technical education, athletics, playgrounds, collaboration areas, kitchens, robotics, and our early childhood center. So we'll kind of go through. I'm just going to recap some highlights for you. In no particular order, because they're all amazing. I'll begin with the dynamic renovations and expansion at the Livonia Career Technical Center. Over the course of about a year and a half, the LCTC building was expanded to include a robotics wing off the north side of the building, creating a dedicated space for our growing robotics programs. Now in its first almost full school year, this wing has performed exactly as intended. Our robotics teams have dedicated spaces for group meetings, building and testing labs with all of the needed equipment and features. There's even a huge room that is just for our 3 middle school robotics teams. So I've compiled a few pictures here. Those are 2 of the workspaces, labs, if you will, where the teams, the one on the left is just a small portion of the middle school robotics testing area, build and test area, and the one on the right is another separate space. Let's see, there are 2 flexible classrooms, which are utilized not only by robotics, but by the LCTC classes. You can see also the large group room on the left where we recently had a district administrators meeting. That room was just relocated, but it was also renovated, and it's a beautiful space for those larger meetings. There are 2 really cool commons areas that are popular spots for students in robotics and in the programs at LCTC. And you can see there that angle is from the front of the facing Newburgh there. So you've got the glass windows all across the front of the facade now. Some students are doing their thing there, hanging out as the space was intended. And then we've got another one here that's kind of if you're looking from Newburgh in to that space. Let's see. I just wanted to comment that my personal opinion, when you go into this commons area, it feels so professional and sophisticated and modern. It feels like any room that you would see, or facility that you would see on a college campus. That's what it always reminds me of. Other classroom areas within the LCTC have been expanded and reconfigured to meet the needs of our growing programs within the LCTC, such as pre-medical, medical, and sports medicine programs. The highlight of the robotics expansion portion has to be the full-size practice competition field pictured here. It's really difficult to get a full picture of the entire field, but I tried my best from this corner angle. So this space allows our teams to strategize and practice in a realistic arena, which is obviously super helpful for our teams as they ready their robots and team members for competitions. We have even opened this practice area to teams from other school districts because word has quickly spread that Livonia added this amazing space. Word has also spread in our own community word has also spread throughout our own community about the renovations at LCTC through our district newsletters and social media. In fact, we will be hosting business leaders this Friday morning at LCTC as we welcome the Livonia Westland Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. They'll be holding their monthly board meeting at the center, and they'll receive a special personalized tour led by Superintendent Oquist, so we can show off all of the improvements to our business leaders in the community. We love to show off all of our improvements that are happening in our schools, and those are happening thanks to the bond issues from both 2013 and 2021. Speaking of inviting the community in to take a look, we are excitedly awaiting the completion of the most significant build and renovation project in LPS in the last 50 years, with the completion of the Livonia Early Childhood Center. And for those who may not know, that is located on Newburgh Road, just north of 6 Mile. We are planning to host a community open house at the new ECC in late July or early August, so our community can see firsthand this incredible building. So stay tuned for details on that. As you know, but just in case the community may not be aware, this 70,000 square foot early childhood center will house all of our child care programs, our 3-year-old and 4-year-old preschool programs, the Great Start Readiness Program, and an array of early childhood special service programs. The building has 4 distinct sections for classrooms, depending on the program, plus a beautiful, welcoming front office area, family mudroom areas for arrival and dismissal. A test kitchen will be coming, which will provide lots of educational exposure for our students in a kitchen setting, which is really cool. Let's see. And there'll be an awesome large gross motor room in addition to age-appropriate playground areas. As you may have seen firsthand, it's easy to imagine this center as a vibrant, child-centered facility that will accommodate many, many families for their child care and preschool needs. We've had lots of interest from our current and new families already. We cannot wait to welcome everyone in the fall. So I'll just click through some of these most recent pictures. The one on the left is the new entrance. I kind of just strolled around the building, which was quite a workout because it's quite large. The picture on the left has the awning for each of the mudroom areas, those welcoming areas for families. So in case it's inclement weather, they will have that nice awning over each of those entrances. I went through last week, and I'm super excited about this. The photo on the left will be the main office. And then we've got some cubby areas already built out. The drywall is up. The air handling system is working. The electrical is installed, and they are just moving right along. So here are a few more pictures of the construction. Lots of windows throughout this center. Speaking of windows, see the circle in the center of this picture. That is not only a window, it's a cool little cubby space for kids to hang out and read a book or just sit and look outside. Those are in each of our classrooms there. Here's a few more. The picture on the right is the gross motor room, which will be just like a huge gymnasium with a rubberized surface flooring. There's a garage overhead door where the little ones can get on their trikes, on their little bicycles, on their tricycles, and come in and out through the large gross motor room onto the playground, which is really neat, another addition. So it's going to be awesome. So those are just some highlights from the ECC. Like I said, stay tuned for our community open house later in the summer. Other highlights from the bond include the newly reimagined library media centers at our schools. This year's LMC completions add to those that were completed in Phase 1 last year. And we can confidently report that these spaces are the place to be. Complementing the LMCs, we are also adding idea factories in which students can collaborate and work creatively on projects. Here's some few pictures just from each of the schools that were where the LMCs were renovated and ready for this current school year. This is Cleveland, There's the Idea Factory on the right. This is Rosedale. Love the colors. Very bright, vibrant. The Idea Factory on the right. I actually caught some kiddos in that one. And then we have Riley Upper Elementary's LMC is also gorgeous. Love the colors. There's some an example of one of the hangout spaces where kids can tuck themselves into the little nooks there and read. And Frost LMC, I could have probably shown you 10 full slides of photos from Frost's renovations. Just a dynamic space there. Our Idea Factory on the right. And lastly, for this school year was Franklin. Again, really resembles a university campus facility. It is just gorgeous. It's sophisticated. It's modern. It's cool. So happy to see the students at Franklin enjoying that awesome space as well. Let's see. Oh, this is okay, so we've already begun work on phase 3 for our LMC renovations, and they're already at work at Stevenson. This is the current state of Stevenson's LMC. Hoover and Roosevelt. And at Roosevelt, you can see 3 cutouts there that will, they wanted to add some windows for some natural lighting in the Roosevelt LMC. And in just a moment, I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Phil Francis to update us on the LMC renovations, in addition to the kitchen remodels and other projects that are to come in phase 3 for this coming summer. One more highlight this year has been the completion of the weight rooms at the 3 high schools. The original weight rooms had not been updated in many, many years. So this improvement has been exciting at Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson. Along with the, here's a picture from Churchill. Along with the athletic programs, the weight rooms are also utilized by our physical education and personal fitness classes at each of the high schools. So they're really getting a good workout already. Pardon the pun. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Francis to offer a quick update on projects we can expect to see this summer.
Well, it looks like you're rolling through the last couple of, or the other 2 schools with the weight rooms there. Stevenson and Franklin was just before that one.
Yep.
But for this summer, we've already begun in the schools. You saw pictures already. Roosevelt's got windows cut out in their spaces. Stevenson is completely cleared out. It was in there earlier today, and it's just a big cavernous space, and they're going to take that and make it into something similar to what we saw in those pictures for Franklin High School. Each school is obviously unique, and we set things up slightly different, but there certainly is the standards that we use and some real consistency from building to building, with some differences between them based upon their own tastes and their own usage of spaces. So we're already into some of those libraries. We've taken over those spaces where we can. And then we're also will be closing up some of our kitchens. It's all about access and how we can get the construction teams in there without a direct entry point. So some schools won't have it pulled ahead, but some do, because we have the ability to get into those spaces and do some work. Construction takes time, and time is what we always want to be able to extend if we can. There'll be other work through these same 5 schools. This summer, it's Stevenson, Holmes, Roosevelt, Hayes, and Hoover. Very similar aesthetics, as the board has seen some renderings, but colors different and some different choices. We know that we have the Idea Factories at our elementary and our middle schools, so those will be begun work during the summertime. And actually just the clearing out now of some of those media centers is what's happening with regard to being able to start that layout of the construction. So they got to break it down, and then they got to build it back up again. There's other work we'll be doing in those 5 schools. The toilet rooms, we do some work in there. We do some one-offs depending on what's needed in the buildings. Here and there, we're adding some of the bottle fillers as we go through schools, et cetera. It's a lot of work. I thank these schools because right now, some of them are displaced. I know their media specialists are certainly displaced because they're not the folks who work in the kitchens There's a lot of work, not just by the construction people, but also our own staff, and they work through it because, as they like to say, whenever they close our freeways, this short-term delay will hopefully give us some long-term relief. We also have the 3 high school pool rooms. Those are underway. I was actually just talking to all 3 ADs today, and I see Mr. Conway and Dusty's over there, and we talked a little bit earlier about their pool rooms and what's going on, and those are going to be nice renovations. We've got some great colors, some great logoing going in, bleachers being updated, et cetera. So the work has begun. We say summer, but really summer's just too short to get some of this work done. So we're off and running, and we'll keep the board updated as we continue through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis, and that completes my bond update.
Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Francis, for that. Does anybody have any comments? Or anybody? Mrs. Jarvis?
You know, when we started doing the bond, we talked about all these great ideas and all the plans that we had. But when we have pictures like this and we can see it either underway or completed, that's so exciting. It's hard to picture them in advance. And when we see the actual, like the early childhood center, how well that's coming along and that it's going to be open before we know it. Thank you for sharing that with us, because it just makes it so real.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Burton?
I'd just like to thank all the members of our community who voted to pass this bond, which made every one of these improvements for our school district and for our students possible. So a huge thank you to many of the folks who are standing in this room right now, and a whole lot more who are outside of this room. But literally without the support of our community, none of these things could happen. So these are a lot of pictures of your tax dollars at work. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Okay, with that, we're going to move on. I do want to just say we are going to be taking a break to congratulate our next honorees that we're going to be congratulating after item 3C, the district update from the superintendent. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go on with item 3A, the recognition of MHSAA Churchill Scholar Athlete. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Burton.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution in recognition of Churchill High School senior Jaden Reggie for being named one of 13 scholar athletes in the state of Michigan by the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for the recognition of MHSAA Churchill Scholar Athlete, Jaden Reggie. And we're going to hear from Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you, President Bradford. Tonight it's my pleasure to do one of my absolute favorite things in this job. That's recognizing some incredibly hardworking students who have recently received state recognition for their efforts. I'll begin by introducing Jaden Reggie. Jaden, if you would just make the long trek to the podium to join me while we talk about you. Jaden is a senior at Churchill High School and was recently named one of just 13 Class A high school scholar athletes in the state by the Michigan High School Athletic Association. So what does it mean to be recognized as an MHSAA scholar athlete? Applicants for this award, which carries a $2,000 college scholarship, must carry a 3.5 grade point average, I assume that's a minimum, and have previously won a letter in a varsity sport in which the MHSAA sponsors a postseason tournament. They must also show active participation in other school and community activities and submit an essay on the importance of sportsmanship in educational athletics. Well, it must have been an easy decision to select Jaden Reggie for this award, and I'd love to tell you why. He is the son of Tom and Melanie, and big brother to Julian, who is also a Churchill freshman. Jaden followed the gifted and talented track through LPS, moving through the ACAP program at Webster, then the MACAP program at Frost Middle School, and finishing up in the Math, Science, and Computers program at Churchill High School. He played varsity basketball and varsity soccer all 4 years and led the soccer team as captain. He was recognized as a KLAA Scholar Athlete during the past 3 years and also received the All-Conference honors in soccer during the past 2 years. When Jaden is not on the court or on the field, he is active in the Livonia Warriors robotics team, as well as Churchill's DECA chapter, serving as president and earning 3 state championships and being named an international finalist. Jaden aspires to pursue a degree in neuroscience on the pre-medical track in college, with the ultimate goal of becoming a doctor. His interests led him to the HOSA program, which stands for Health Occupations Students of America, and was named a HOSA state and international champion. He is also in the career intern program through the Livonia Career Technical Center, working at an orthopedic clinic. He said this experience played a significant role in deciding his future career path. But wait, there's more. Jaden serves as vice president of the Churchill chapter of the Science National Honor Society, and is also chapter president of the Spanish Honor Society. Is it Spanish Honor Society or Spanish National Honor Society? Okay, Spanish National Honor Society. Jaden will also be invited to return to the Board of Education next month when we recognize the district's National Merit Scholars. So we may see him back at the podium next month. And to put all of these amazing accomplishments officially into the Livonia Public Schools record, we have prepared a special resolution which notes much of what I relayed about Jaden. So if I could ask Trustee Colleen Burton to join us at the podium to read and present the resolution.
And while she's getting up there, parents of Jaden, if they'd like to come forward to take a better view of the reading, come on around, please.
Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, April 22nd, 2024. Resolution. Whereas the trustees of the Livonia Public Schools School District Board of Education are desirous of publicly recognizing the outstanding accomplishments of students who distinguish themselves during the pursuit of their public education in the school district. And whereas Jaden Reggie, a senior at Churchill High School, has distinguished himself as an excellent athlete with high academic achievements by being named one of 13 scholar athletes in the state by the Michigan High School Athletics Association. And whereas Jaden earned this distinction throughout his 4 years playing basketball and soccer, as well as serving as varsity soccer captain for 3 years at Churchill. And whereas Jaden is a student in the rigorous Math, Science, and Computers program at Churchill, is a National Merit Scholarship winner, a HOSA state and international champion, DECA president and 3-time state champion and international finalist, and is a member of the Livonia Warriors robotics team, the Science National Honor Society, serving as vice president, and is a member of the Spanish Honor Society at Churchill, in addition to being a leader in his church and a volunteer at St. Mary Mercy Hospital. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate Jaden Reggie for his outstanding accomplishments in athletics, academics, extracurricular activities, and leadership roles at Churchill High School, and wish him well in his future endeavors as he applies the discipline and perseverance needed to excel in athletics and academics to all areas of his life.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. We have also prepared a special certificate to go along with a fancy copy of the resolution. The certificate reads Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Achievement. Michigan High School Athletic Association Scholar Athlete, Jaden Reggie, honored by the Board of Education for athletic and academic achievement. Dated April 22nd, 2024, signed by Superintendent Andrea Oquist and Board of Education President Karen Bradford.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And with that, did you want to say a few words? Okay.
So I just want to say a few words, and before I say anything, I want to thank the Lord for His grace and His blessings and mercies. I wouldn't be here without Him, and all glory goes to Him. I want to thank the LPS Board of Education for this opportunity to be recognized, and I want to thank Mrs. Jenkins in particular for reaching out to deliver this award. I also want to thank Mr. Conway, who is here, who's provided tremendous support and guidance, especially this year, as well as Ms. Quesada. She's also here as well. I want to thank her for her support. So I just want to say a few words about me and what this Livonia community means to me. I was born and raised in Livonia, and Livonia has provided so much for me, from academics to athletics, and I've been a part of so many experiences, organizations, and activities that have molded me into the person that I am today. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank just a few people in my LPS community as I kind of traverse my years in LPS. So as Mr. Jenkins kind of noted, I was in ACAT. I started my LPS journey in ACAT at Webster, and I would thank all my teachers there who challenged me and taught me the importance of hard work and being creative. And then after that, I moved on to Frost. Mr. Abate is here, who's my assistant principal. And I want to thank all my teachers and staff who helped me reap the benefits of really putting in a good faith effort. And then finally, as I approached my high school years at Churchill, I want to thank all my teachers and staff at Churchill. I want to, in particular, talk about the MSc program, which has given me a lot and allowed me to grow a lot. Mr. Bjorklund is the MSc facilitator, and I want to thank him and all the other teachers that have really created a supportive community when I've been able to regularly step out of my comfort zone. And these teachers have, kind of allowed me the opportunity to create a passion for the sciences, and as Mrs. Jenkins noted, that's influenced my desire to pursue a career in medicine. So I want to thank all my teachers in the academic sphere that have really, really shaped who I am today. And also want to talk about my athletic journey. I've been playing sports in Livonia my whole life. With basketball, I was playing LJL, I was playing Livonia Hawks, and Frost basketball as well. With soccer, I was playing Livonia Soccer Club and Michigan Wolves in Livonia. So Livonia has really been the center of it all for me. And then moving on to high school, I just want to thank a few people from the Churchill soccer program. I want to thank my coaches from JV and varsity, Coach Phil, Eric, and Chris for supporting me all the time on and off the field. And then also with basketball, I want to thank Coach Jay for always being there for me. And I learned so many lessons, whether it being just to compete or putting the team over yourself, that we is greater than me. And throughout my experiences, I've learned that sports are a microcosm of life. And I want to thank all my coaches and staff for allowing me to grow in this arena. And as Ms. Jenkins noted, I want to thank the other staff and mentors who've been a part of this journey, not just in athletics and academics, but in other activities like DECA and robotics and debate. I wouldn't be here without them. And there's so many more people I want to thank that I don't have time for. But before I conclude, I just want to thank my parents. I call them Mama and Dada. They're so important to me, and they've taught me that putting faith first and putting your best foot forward is really going to allow you to succeed. And I'm going to conclude with a really cliche proverb. That's, it takes a village to raise a child. But truly, I've not just been raised, but I've been nurtured by this Livonia community, and I'm really, really thankful for it all. So I just want to thank you, everyone, again for this opportunity.
Wow, congratulations, Jaden. Turns out he is not only amazing on paper, but also as a speaker, so very impressed, very impressed. Would you join me once again in giving one final applause?
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. I just have one question for you, Jaden. When do you sleep? It's quite an impressive record that you have. And I just want to wish you the best of luck. We need good doctors. You're well on your way. I mean, looking at the array of things that you do, it must have been difficult to pick one path. But now that you're on that path, do it the best of your ability, 110%. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anybody else? Mrs. Oquist?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I did you want to say
Nope,
something?
you go right
Okay.
ahead.
Well, congratulations, Jaden. If I can't imagine a more impressive resolution to share, and I can easily see why the MHSAA chose you to represent the state of Michigan. But even more impressive is your focus on faith and family, and your thanks to all those who contributed to making you who you are. So please know that we are grateful for the recognition that you shared with our hardworking staff, with your parents, and this village will continue to root you on.
Congratulations. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton for the recognition of MHSAA Churchill Scholar Athlete Jaden Aregi, supported by Mrs. Acosta. Would you take the roll, please, Mrs. Acosta?
Yes. Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, motion carries, and congratulations once again, and best of luck. Moving on to item 3B, the recognition of Franklin High School Pom-Pom State Champions. We have both the JV and the varsity team here this evening, so we're going to go ahead and do a motion for the JV. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford?
Mrs. Acosta.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution recognizing Franklin High School's junior varsity pom-pom team for capturing the Mid-American Pom-Pom State Championship for Class A Division I.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mr. Johnson, for the recognition of Franklin High School Pom-Pom State Champions of the JV squad. And we are going to hear from Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you, President Bradford. The next recognition is a 2-for-1 of sorts. We're excited to have the JV and the varsity pom-pom teams from Franklin High School here with us tonight. As noted earlier, along with their athletic director, the principal, Mr. Pacey, assistant principal. Oh my goodness, there's quite the fan club behind me for these hardworking girls. So we're recognizing them this evening for winning the state's championships in Class A Division I back in February. I'll start with the JV team, which is coached by Hannah Sexton and Haley Gorman, and overseen by varsity coach Haley Petrovich. Coaches, if you wouldn't mind, you're all right here. Would you mind joining me so I'm not all alone up here? First, I'd like to congratulate all of the members of the JV Pom-Pom squad, which is comprised of the following members. And please excuse if I mispronounce your name. I'll try my best. Audrey Alexander, Alyssa Babikian, Claire Beckner, Keelan Begley, Samantha Grabke, Haley Gunzel, Gracelyn Horgan, Bailey McIntyre, Delilah Opaleski, Leah Zostek, and Isabella Wang. The JV team started the season on a high note by receiving the Grand Champion trophy during the summer camp competition at Davenport University. They placed third in the large JV high kick division at the Mid-American Pom-Pom High Kick Championship in November, and ended their season with the Division I state championship, marking the third year that they've achieved state championship. So if I could please ask trustee Liz Jarvis, is that right?
No, it would be Mrs. Acosta.
Oh, Mrs. Acosta,
Yeah.
to join us at the podium to read a special resolution that we have prepared.
Any of the parents would like to get a better
Yeah. You're welcome,
camera
you're
for the
welcome, please.
resolution. You're welcome.
And I'm gonna ask, would the JV team please stand while she reads the motion, please, so we can see everybody. Thank you.
Good call. Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, April 22nd, 2024. Resolution. Whereas the trustees of the Livonia Public Schools District Board of Education are desirous of publicly recognizing the outstanding accomplishments of students who distinguish themselves during the pursuit of their public education in the school district. And whereas, that's not the right one.
Junior varsity?
Yeah, this is not it. Okay. Sorry, excuse me.
No problem. We'll just go ahead and we'll do a reread of that, once we find that document.
Here you go, Stacy, do you need it? Suggestions, do you need it?
Yes,
I've got a fancy copy, but it's just easier to read it.
sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and reread that resolution.
You're good.
Thank you.
Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, April 22nd, 2024, resolution. Whereas the trustees of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education are desirous of publicly recognizing the outstanding accomplishments of students who distinguish themselves during the pursuit of their public education in the school district, and whereas the Franklin High School Junior Varsity Pom-Pom team has distinguished itself by achieving the 2024 Mid-American Pom-Pom JV Division I State Championship title, and whereas the team achieved this accomplishment in the Mid-American Pom-Pom Junior Varsity category with a score of 459.5 out of a possible 550 points at the competition at Eastern Michigan University on February 11th, 2024. And whereas this adds to the outstanding accomplishments the team achieved during its 2023-2024 season, marking its third time being named state champions and achieving third place success at the High Kick Championship in November, before enjoying success at the regional championship to qualify for the state competition. Now therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate the Franklin High School Junior Varsity Pom-Pom team for its outstanding accomplishments and wish all of the team members well in their future endeavors as they apply the discipline and perseverance needed to excel in sports to all areas of their lives.
For both, okay. All right. We also have a certificate. That's the correct one here, which reads, Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Achievement, Franklin High School Junior Varsity Pom-Pom, Class A Division I, Mid-American State Championship, honored by the Board of Education for Athletic Achievement, dated April 22nd, 2024, signed by Superintendent Andrea Oquist and Board President Karen Bradford. So congratulations. I'm going to turn it over after the next presentation. Coach Haley is going to speak on behalf of both. I would like to also introduce Kayla Petrovich and Haley Gorman. They are the JV coaches, kind of like assisted by Haley Petrovich. So she's going to speak on behalf of both teams after the next portion.
Thank you, Mrs.
Okay.
Jenkins. Do we have any questions or comments? I would just like to say congratulations. As a JV team, I know you must spend countless hours working on your routines, and the good news is you moving into the varsity, so I'm expecting maybe we'll see you again at this podium at some point. We hope. So congratulations. And I'm going to go ahead and close out this motion. So we're going to go ahead and vote. We have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mr. Johnson, for the recognition of the Franklin High School Pom-Pom State Champions JV team. And Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, motion carries. So we're going to go ahead and I recognize the recognition of Franklin High School Pom-Pom State Champions, the JV team. May I have a motion, please?
For the varsity.
Varsity team. What is it tonight? Varsity team, thank you.
President Bradford.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution recognizing Franklin High School's varsity pom-pom team for capturing the Mid-American Pom-Pom State Championship for Class A Division I.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield, for the recognition of Franklin High School Pom-Pom State Champions, the varsity team. And we're going to hear from Mrs. Jenkins. Thank you.
Okay, but before we move on to varsity, can we get a huge round of
Oh.
applause for our JV varsity?
Yes. Well, we can continue to do that for both teams.
Of course, of course.
We'll just
I
keep it
just
rolling.
felt funny moving on without that.
I got it. We'll keep it
So
rolling.
it was quite a season for Franklin's varsity pom-pom. In fact, it was a perfect season, if you can believe that. But first, allow me to introduce the varsity team, which is coached by Haley and Kayla Petrovich behind me here. And the same as we did for JV, if the varsity girls could stand. We welcome Cheyenne Bahorsky, excuse me, Brianna Bartz, Katarina Benson, Brooklyn Branham, Reese Chang, Caitlin Fugetti, Alyssa Grease, who is a co-captain, Brienne Horgan, Kiera Kelly, Riley Kirk, Lauren Kotrich, Mackenzie Latham, Scarlett Losh, Lily McKinley, Ava Fan, Lily Poisson, who is also a co-captain, Maya Wrigley, Davinae Scott, Carly Shiner, Madeline Shiner, Lily Shimbera, Kaya Ward, Malaya Wyatt, and Emily Young. So now let's get back to the perfect season I had mentioned earlier. The team kicked off the season with a Team Unity Award, a first place in senior kick, and a grand champion trophy at summer camp at Davenport University. From there, the season just kept getting better. Every member of the varsity team made the Mid-American Pom-Pom All-Star team, and that's the team you see cheering and marching in the Thanksgiving Day parade. So must have been pretty cool to be on TV. And that was for the second year in a row that all of our Franklin varsity Pommers were on the All-Star team. This is the team, I've already said that, I'm sorry. In November, the team competed in the Mid-American Pom-Pom High Kick Championship and placed first in the large varsity high kick division. And the team capped off its season with a Class A Division I state championship in February at Eastern Michigan University. I'd like to now invite Board Trustee Liz Jarvis to join us at the podium to read a special resolution that we've prepared that will officially put all of these amazing achievements into the LPS record. Let's see if we have it correctly here. Here we go.
Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, April 22nd, 2024. Resolution. Whereas the trustees of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education are desirous of publicly recognizing the outstanding accomplishments of students who distinguish themselves during the pursuit of their public education in the school district. And whereas the Franklin High School varsity pom-pom team has distinguished itself by achieving the 2024 Mid-American Pom-Pom Class A Division I State Championship title. And whereas Franklin Varsity Pom-Pom achieved this accomplishment in the Mid-American Pom-Pom Varsity category with a score of 497.5 out of a possible 550 points at the competition at Eastern Michigan University on February 11th, 2024. And whereas this adds to the outstanding accomplishments the team has achieved during its 2023-2024 season, once again making school history with a perfect season that included winning the high kick competition in November, followed by winning the regional competition to qualify for the state competition. Now therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate the Franklin High School varsity pom-pom team for its outstanding accomplishments and wish all of the team members well in their future endeavors as they apply the discipline and perseverance needed to excel in sports to all areas of their lives. Congratulations. Well done, Megan.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. I always love how you read the resolutions. You have quite the knack. I love it. Let's see. Of course, we have created a special certificate, which reads Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Achievement, Franklin High School Varsity Pom-Pom, Class A, Division I, Mid-American State Championship, honored by the Board of Education for Athletic Achievement, dated April 22nd, 2024, signed by Superintendent Andrea Oquist and Board President Karen Bradford. I'll get that to Coach here, and Coach Haley Petrovich will share a few thoughts with the board. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Haley Petrovich, and I'm the head coach of the varsity pom team at Franklin High School. I have a lot of thank yous to say on behalf of our entire program, starting first and foremost with Superintendent Oquist, President Bradford, Mrs. Stacy Jenkins for getting this all set up for us, and the entire board. We're truly so honored to have experienced the outpouring of support that we have throughout this time, and just really thankful to be here in front of you tonight. So thank you so much for having us. We're truly so grateful for this experience. I'd also like to thank our administrators at Franklin. We have a really special group of administrators that facilitate a great community, and whether they've been at competitions, performances, or even popping into practice just to see how we're doing, they've been our #1 supporters, and so we're truly so grateful for them. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to Mr. Hall for supporting me through my first year as head coach and showing these girls the same support. He's really instilled what it means to be Franklin made into not only our program, but into the entire Franklin athletics, which has proven to be such a driving force behind our success. Really, none of this would be possible without him. So thank you so much, Mr. Hall, from the bottom of my heart for everything. I'd also like to thank our parents. We have such a dedicated group of parents, which isn't something that we take lightly. They let us have their girls for long hours on end to do what we love, and they're always willing to offer the utmost support, and so that we're forever grateful. And that leads me into these amazing girls. We truly have the most hardworking and humble group of girls that we could have ever imagined working with. They show up to practice every day, giving 110%, no questions asked. And our program's success this season is a direct reflection of everything that they've poured into this entire year. We're really going to miss this particular group, especially our 10 seniors who are moving on to bigger and better things. But this was a really, really special year, and it wouldn't have been possible without all of these girls. But all in all, I just wanted to say that we really hope that we've made the Livonia community proud and can continue to make you all proud. Thank you again to everyone who came out and supported tonight and who has supported us throughout this entire year. And the last thing I'll leave you all with is a big Go Patriots.
Go Patriots!
Okay, and that concludes our presentation. And if I could have one more round of applause for both of these amazing teams.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I'm sure we do. Mrs. Burton?
Just congratulations. Your sport is unique in that you have to be simultaneously perfect.
Yes.
And watching you perform has just been amazing. The number of, it's not even hours. I know from friends of mine who have had daughters through the program that it's years of experience and years of practice that can bring you to this level of champion performances. So congratulations. Not only are you individually excelling, but you're learning uniquely to work together as a team. Most teams work together going from one to the next person, but more often than not, you folks are doing it simultaneously, which is just another level of real team building and teamsmanship that you don't see very often. That level of teamwork will carry you really, really far in this world. So congratulations, and yes, you've made Livonia very proud.
Yes. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Burton. Bradford. Burton, Bradford, I got all these B's. As Jaden has said, the cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. And as Haley said, they've had the support of just about everybody in this room. So I want all the girls to turn to the administrators and their parents and give them a round of applause. Thank you.
That's what I was going to say. The parents, the hours driving back and forth, this just didn't happen overnight. This has started many years before, I'm sure, as you're moving them up the ranks here. And we all appreciate the parents and how much time and effort going to all of these different events. And it does take a lot of time. And I know the girls are probably really proud of their parents for getting them there and making sure that they're ready for competition. And we're so proud of all of you for all of the hard work and effort that you've put in every single day, because as Mrs. Burton says, that's not easy to be all in sync all the time. And it takes hours and hours of work in those gyms trying to get your routines down. And I'd also like to thank the coaches. These three gals, their time and effort that they put in just to coordinate everything, thank you for all you do. It really, really shows. And these girls, like Mrs. Burton said, will learn valuable lessons moving on into other endeavors. So congratulations to both teams. Mrs. Oakwith.
Thank you. Hi, ladies. It's great to see you, great to see your coaches, great to see your families. Wow, you are remarkable. And I just have to share with our board that as remarkable as they are in their performances, having had the chance to meet them and talk with them, the relationships and the bonds they have with one another and the support that they give to one another is something really special. And I'm going to tell you, I think that really emanates from the three coaches that they have. All three of you are proud patriots and Palmers, and that shows. It shows in the way you interact with your athletes. It shows in the preparation and the planning that you do, and then in the way that each one of you have represented your school with such pride. The precision and the stamina and the skill that it takes to do the sport that you do is tremendous. And I don't think most people know how long your season really is. It starts with tryouts in the spring. You go through the summer to get ready for camp, and camp is pretty grueling. It's a lot of fun, but it's really grueling. And the next thing you know, you're getting ready for high kick and designing costumes, and then heading into regionals and finally to states. It is almost the entire year. And then I'm sure the seniors are turning right around and helping create tryout routines for the spring again. So it is a tremendous amount of dedication for this sport. This isn't a couple of months long. This really is just about a year-round program. This might be the only downtime you have, and you're spending it with us at a board meeting. We feel pretty special for that. And I too want to echo the support of the parents. As a longtime pom mom, I remember braiding a lot of hair, providing a lot of breakfast, and giving lots of hugs of encouragement all around. And I know you've done that and so much more. So thank you for being such a tremendous support system for, I'm sure, many, many years. And you do have a great team. We have a group of administrators from both Churchill and Franklin in the back of the room that sincerely root on the success of all of their kiddos. And that means so much to us. So thank you for the dedication that each one of you show, and how much you work to know and lift our students. So we are so proud of you. We wish you could perform right now. We would love to see you. But the work that you do is tremendous. You should be so proud of it. It is hard work, and you are rock stars. So congratulations.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield, for the recognition of Franklin High School varsity pom-pom state champions. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Thank you once again. And we're going to go on to item 3C, the district update from the superintendent, and after that, we will take a short break to congratulate all our honorees. Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you so much, President
And
Bradford.
welcome here.
Thank you.
You made it.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Of course.
So there's only about 3 minutes between you guys getting to leave and what we have here now, right? So we're going to just share some district highlights. I love being able to share these. It certainly doesn't capture everything that's happening in our district, but an awful lot. And you have all been part of some of these highlights as well over the months and years. So we're ready to kick off with some learning and growing. We have some cute little kiddos, first grade Mrs. Shocker's class at Coolidge. They were learning about different adaptations for animals as part of one of their literacy units, and drew pictures and learned all the ways that animals use their ears. And we'll move on to some other firsties across town at Hayes in Mrs. Pierce's class. They love creating some artwork. I've had a chance to meet a lot of those kiddos, and they are awfully hardworking and really doing a great job with their writing as well. And they're doing some fun activities about the moon and sun, which was perfect for this month. Back over at Coolidge, we have Mrs. Allen's class learning about measurement. So you know that in elementary we often talk about non-standard forms of measurement, and so they were using their arm spans and different tools throughout the classroom, as well as using some traditional inches and centimeters in figuring out why one measurement is larger than another. And we head over to Garfield. We always love to highlight what's happening in the Skill Center program, and we have our students there who were learning how to calculate the amount of sugar in certain foods and drinks, and we've been able to share some of their tips about healthy living habits, and it is certainly an eye-opener, some of the things that they researched. We had Hayes this past weekend. They were able to go out to the Detroit Zoo and earn and accept their green prize. They also received from some Detroit Zoo fertilizer. Yes, that is called zoo poo. I'm just going to say it in the microphone at a meeting. But I will say Mrs. Lakatos and the team over at Hayes have done so much, and the students have really gotten into being a green school. And the work that they do is amazing. And in their art room, if you have a chance to visit, they are constantly using recycled items as part of their art. And they absolutely love it. Their creativity just abounds. But Mrs. Lakatos, their art teacher, is a big part of sustaining their status as an evergreen school. Spring sports are in full spring. Would you agree back there? All right, you guys are still standing. You're awake. Those are good things. We had our Franklin JV tennis had the support of the varsity Lady Patriots during a recent victory that they had over Salem, and those beautiful courts. New courts are looking fantastic. We have a chance here to congratulate Coach Berryman. Coach Berryman, longtime coach at Stevenson, was able to celebrate 600th win with a big win over Walled Lake Northern. And we're going to continue on with Stevenson girls tennis, recently named city champs. Those city championships in all the different sports are always a date they mark on the calendar. We'll move on to just a quick picture of our Lady Spartans softball with our athletic director, Mr. Muscat. As you know, we have our Livonia United lacrosse, both boys and girls, JV and varsity. So our girls, Livonia United lacrosse, is off to an awesome start this season. They've faced some inclement weather, but have been doing a wonderful job. And our Franklin boys track team had some great success at the Belleville Tiger Relay. They took home many first place trophies, so congratulations to them. And speaking of champs, Churchill boys and girls track were city champs at the city meet, and I can tell you that is a huge accomplishment. And you guys are still standing next to one another. I'm so proud of you. I love it. I love it. That's a huge thing. It's a huge thing to get city champs in track, but to get it in boys and girls, a really big deal. We have some of our Franklin tennis players here who all won first place medals at the Howell tournament. They are bundled up, but they are awfully proud of their efforts. And as you know, on April 8th, we had viewing parties across the district. Our elementary students were in session. Unfortunately, our secondary students were not, but students and staff really gathered across, of course, using their safety gear. I want to thank all of the PTAs and schools who helped purchase the glasses for our students. So we took time to learn about what happens during eclipse, and then really to take a look and apply that science as they watched it happen live. It was a really cool experience, and I'm so glad that our kiddos got to enjoy that. So we'll share some pictures as we go through from, again, the playgrounds and across the classrooms. We had some folks on roofs. Those were primarily adults, you'll be happy to know. But again, across the playgrounds and in different groups. And if you just have a chance to take a look, I know Mrs. Jenkins put a ton on our Facebook. I will tell you the expressions of some of the kiddos were amazing as we were going through. That was even our group there in the center as we went outside and took a look. So this is also 6th grade camp time. We had some students from Cooper and Riley recently at 6th grade camp, and oh my goodness, just campfires and activities and high ropes and all of those different things. We had a group from Cooper head out today, so hopefully they'll have some great weather. It's really one of those core memories for our students when they have the chance to go out at camp. So thank you to our parent volunteers, to our staff, and all those who are brave enough to spend the night in the cabins and help us do the chaperoning. And we also recently had our Frost 8th graders out on their trip to DC. Just what a wonderful experience for our students who may have not had that opportunity yet or may not in the future. The fact that they can learn about all the monuments and the landmarks and have that bonding experience together is pretty special. So we want to give a few kudos out. We had a Churchill golfer on the day of the eclipse, no less. shoot a hole-in-one at Plum Hollow. Was he pretty excited? I can only imagine. So congratulations to Ethan. He shot 185 yards with a 5-iron. So looks like a happy guy there. One of the things I love about our student athletes across this district at all of our high schools is the work that they do to give back to the community. And it's something that I know our athletic directors, our coaches, and our principals and assistant principals really work to instill that responsibility of representing your school. And so here we have some Stevenson hockey players. We're able to do some recent landscaping at Johnson. They helped at a residence home with a project that was pretty challenging for the homeowners, and they were able to get that done. So we thank the hockey players and Coach Mitchell for organizing that through a number of different activities throughout our community. And we're going to move on to, I know many of our board were able to attend the opening of the LPS Fine Arts Festival. If you've not had a chance to check it out, it's at the library through the end of April, so just a few more days. Here's a picture of a number of our amazing art teachers, but you will be so wowed at the works on display from our students. It was absolutely breathtaking to see their drawings, to see their clay, jewelry, and it's on the first floor of the library and up on the second floor as well. So thank you to the library for hosting us. We recently had a couple of wonderful productions of Little Women at Stevenson High School, a great production, and we always want to not only recognize our students and our talented performers on stage, but all of the cast and crew and those who help behind the scenes. And Kappa this past weekend, She Kills Monsters. They once again just blew away their audiences with this production. It's a dramatic comedy featuring 90s nerd culture, and everyone was so impressed with the cast and crew's dedication and skill. I'm sure you were very proud, Mrs. Casada. So just a few more, mark your calendars. A quick reminder about the art festival. And remember, these updates always go on the website, so you don't have to physically mark your calendar. You can just check it out. And the next one is the Niji-Iro application window is open. As you may or may not know, we are one of only 4 schools in the entire country that are a Japanese immersion elementary school. And so Niji-Iro, our window is open for out-of-school applications. That will be open through May 22nd. And this week we're going to be over at Churchill High School on Wednesday evening. We're going to celebrate, get this, over 1,000 students who participated in Youth Making a Difference this year. It was a huge number. We'll get a chance to see their projects and celebrate them, share a few remarks, and then I quickly get off the stage so that the magician can come on, because that's who they're waiting for. And then we have the Kappa Dance Spring Showcase. That will be held, I think, this weekend, right? Yep, Friday and Saturday. Tickets are available at the door. So if you'd like to support our Kappa dancers and see their talent and hard work, please join Churchill this weekend. Couple more, we have a lot of different summer sports camps. If you check out the front page of our website, you'll see this graphic, and you'll be able to check out all of the different camps being held at each of our high schools and throughout the district. And finally, we have a family resource fair being held this Friday evening at the Jackson Early Childhood Center. You can drop in. There's great activities for kiddos, while parents are able to receive valuable information on all things early childhood. So that is it, Mrs. Bradford. Thank you for letting me share a few highlights.
Thank you, Superintendent Oquist. There's so many things going on in this district. You could have probably gone on for another half hour.
That would not have been popular, but I
Yes, that's true. At this time, we're going to take a little break to say congratulations to our honorees. We will be back shortly. And we're back, thank you. We're going to continue on with our meeting tonight. We're going to go on to item 3D, written communications. Do we have any written communications? I don't see any. All right, we'll go on to item 3E, response to prior audience communications. I do not have any written response. Does anybody? All right, moving on to item 3F, audience communications. I do not have any blue slips this evening. So seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on our agenda this evening to item 4, our consent agenda. And may I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of March 18, 2024. 7A, approval of 2024-2025 LCTC cooperative agreement. 7B, approval of 2024-2025 LTP cooperative agreement.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Burton for our consent agenda. Is there any items within the consent agenda that any board member would wish to remove at this time? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Burton for our consent agenda. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield,
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford.
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to item 6, our business matters. Item A, the approval of LCTC technology purchase. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Sir, where's the kicker sheet? Sorry, I was open the wrong one. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the purchase of new Chromebook carts, and Google Chrome EDU licenses for LCTC and specific programs through a 61A added costs funds.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the approval of LCTC technology purchase, and we're going to hear from Mr. Etu.
Good evening, Board of
Mr.
Education.
Etu.
Thank you, President Bradford. Yes, this is for the Livonia Career Technical Center. It is for the purchase of new Chromebooks, Chromebook carts, and Google Chrome EDU licenses. This is through our 61A CTE Equipment Fund. Thank you. And this is through our people-driven technology out of Byron Center, Michigan. It's through contract pricing, and the total amount is $56,764.45. The use of this equipment will be utilized in the Career Center, as well as different programs such as criminal justice, construction trades, 2 health science programs, and again, as I said, in the Career Center as well for general use. I'm asking for the board to vote on that this evening.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the approval of LCTC technology purchase. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford.
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to item 6B, the approval of purchase of Churchill Pool bleachers, the 2021 bond. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Burton.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation to purchase a set of bleachers for Churchill High School from Southern Bleacher Company Incorporated, located in Graham, Texas, for a total amount of $74,845.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for the approval of purchase of Churchill Pool bleachers, the 2021 bond, and tonight we're going to hear from Mr. Francis.
Good evening, everybody. This is, as mentioned, a part of the bond renovations in the high school pool room This is a purchase that was done through consortium, which is satisfying the board's obligation to bid. And the price that you see includes not only the actual set, but also the delivery and the setting of the bleachers in the area. So we're going to be removing the old ones that are there, disposing of those. They're well past their prime, if you will, and we'll be bringing in a new set.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burton?
Mr. Francis, I believe we discussed this at the committee of the whole, but I just don't remember. When do we expect that the new bleachers will be ready for use?
Well, from what we've been told as far as what the lead time is, they should be here in this summer, so it would be as we understand it, before the start of the season.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for the approval of purchase of Churchill Pool Bleachers 2021 bond. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to item 8, personnel matters. Item A, teacher for approval. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Bonnefield.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and offer employment for the 2023-24 school year to the teacher listed on the attached document.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the teachers for approval. This evening, we're going to hear from Mr. Abati.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Just one teacher for approval this evening that he fills a need in secondary math. He's very well qualified for the position. We are confident he will perform at a high level and represent LPS in a manner that is consistent with our shared vision and collective commitments. His position has also been included in the 23-24 budget. We are pleased to be recommending this talented professional to join our LPS family, and with your approval, we are excited to have him working with our students.
Thank you, Mr. Abati. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for teacher for approval. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to item 8B, leaves of absence. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Jarvis.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the requests for a leave of absence as listed below. Emma Chapman, 2024-2025 school year. Lindsay Childress, May 3rd, 2024. Hannah Landon, 2024-2025 school year. Caitlin Lefebvre, 2024-2025 school year. Seth Torkelson Regan, 2024-2025 school year. Jacqueline Walker, 2024-2025 school year.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield, for leaves of absence, and we're going to hear from Mr. Abati.
Yes, thank you. The staff members listed in your documentation are requesting leaves in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements, and we ask that you please approve their leaves as presented.
Thank you. All right. Any comments or questions? All right. We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield, for leaves of absence. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to item 8C, resignations. That is for board information only. We will move on to item 8D, retirements. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford?
Mrs. Acosta.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation for services rendered by Leona Andrus, Jadranka Angie Bajra, Terry Bennett, Ann Seaborn, Patricia Cook, Celia Davis, Karen Dillon, Christine Fankel, Leo Fink, Diane Gran, Leanne Higgins, Jane Belinda Katsaros, Renee Melcher, Kirsten Nickel, Karen Oakes, Marilee Olson, Catherine Ruckhaber, Eric Stromberg, Diane Walker, Donna Wensing, Lynn Whitaker, and Betty Jo Woodworth.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mr. Johnson for retirements. And we are going to hear this evening from Mrs. Keats.
Good evening. There's a lot of notable names on that list tonight as we're nearing the end of this school year. Tonight, we honor and congratulate 22 members of our LPS family who are retiring from their positions with Livonia Public Schools. As they leave the district, they take with them a combined total of 563 years of experience. On behalf of the administration, I would like to thank our retirees for dedicated years of service they provided to the students and staff of LPS, and we ask the board to please adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation.
Thank you, Mrs. Keats. Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burton.
As we say frequently, and it stays so true, it really is bittersweet that when we look at these. We certainly wish our employees and our team members, and in this case, so many on this list, our friends, a wonderful retirement chapter, and at the same time, we are so sad to see them go. They take with them such an incredible amount of experience. And several have just become more than work colleagues, but personal friends. So we just, it's, as we've said several times, if we vote no, will you stay? Yeah, and I don't think it works that way. But thank you so much to all these folks, and know that you will be truly missed.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. And Mrs. Acosta.
Thank you. When I look at all these names, I think about all the lives that have been impacted throughout the years in our district. And I say that as a parent, so not just the kiddos, but families that have been impacted by the years of service that these individuals have provided to all of us. And just congratulations, and wishing you all the best in the next journey.
Thank you. Superintendent Oquist.
I'll just mention, I often think when we do our retirement acknowledgments and our resolutions about the quote, and again, I will say these positions go across all different aspects of our district in just about every department. But there's a saying that says on the first day of school, that your students are a list of names on your roster, and by the end of the year, their individual lives, hearts, and minds that you've touched. And I would say that is true for our educators on this list, for our paraprofessionals, and our leaders who are on this list, and for all of those in the service areas and operations. I would say the same goes for your colleagues and those that you serve throughout your departments and schools. Many of these are folks that I started with in this district, and we wrangled through the first few years of being fledgling newbies in the district together, and I do wish each and every one of you the very, very best. And thank you for the years of service are tremendous. They range anywhere from a decade to almost 4 decades. So we're very, very grateful for the folks on this list and for all that they've given.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. I echo those sentiments. I wish the very best on all of these leaders of our district that have served so valiantly over the years. We really appreciate all your hard work and dedication, and we do wish you all the best as you move on in your role of retirement. This is a hard one to vote on, but we're going to anyway, so congratulations. We have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mr. Johnson for retirements. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We're going to move on to item 9, hearing from board members. And we are going to go with item A, which is the second reading of board policy, business management, EBD, energy management conservation. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Jarvis.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached documents for the following policies in business management: EBD, energy management conservation, and EE, food services management and free and reduced price meals.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Bon. We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield, for a second reading of board policy, business management, EBD, energy management conservation. I believe we're going to go ahead and do that one first, and then we will vote on that, and then we will also do the next one after that. So we're going to hear from Mr. Francis on the first one, please. EBD, energy management conservation.
Thank you very much. This is a, excuse me, this is the second reading. The policy had just some minor updates. We brought it into to today's actual use of the policy. The board had gone through a study session where we had revisions and was able to work through it with me during the study session. And we also went through the committee of the whole, and we had our first reading last month. So this is the second reading of this board policy.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Any questions or comments regarding that policy? Mr. Johnson.
Just a clarification, President Burton, we're only voting on EBD, energy management conservation,
Correct.
under this motion, correct?
No.
The way the
Mrs.
motion is
Mrs.
written, they're
Burton.
both in there, though.
Yeah.
As Mr. Francis was just saying, we'll vote on both because they're both listed in the motion. We'll vote on the motion, whatever's in the motion itself. So since the motion includes both policies, we will be voting on both
Okay, so.
in one vote.
So we should wait and go over the next one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go on to the second reading board policy, business management, item EE, food services management and free and reduced priced meals. And Mr. Francis, thank you.
Thank you. And similarly, this board policy EE, having to do with food service management and free and reduced price meals, was brought to the board at a study session. Really, the main change here, as you recall, was that the state of Michigan has the free meals for all currently. So we wanted to call that out in this policy and state that we would be following it. We did sit through a committee of the whole and reviewed this, as well as last month at the voting meeting had the first reading. So here we are at the second reading for this board policy.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield, for the second reading of board policy, business management, EBD, energy management conservation, and EE, food services management and free and reduced price meals. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield.
Yes.
Mrs. Burton.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford.
Yes, that motion carries. All right, moving on to item 9C. It's the first reading of board policy, board operations, BHA, our code of ethics. And this is a first reading, so it does not require a motion. And we have been discussing the code of ethics agreement, and we're going to go ahead this evening and read that code of ethics aloud. Typically, this is done at the first of the year, the board will read through this policy and make any changes that needs to be made on this policy. And then we'll read through it, and this is our first reading. And then we'll read it in its entirety, and then we'll vote on it at our next regular meeting for our second reading. So I will go ahead and start that, and we'll just round robin and start with Mrs. Burton when needed, and come on down and come back. Oh, good, she can help. All right, we're having some technical difficulties with our computers. All right. All right, so it is bylaws of the board. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've got a computer malfunction. Bylaws of the board, BHA, Board Operations Code of Ethics, May 20th, 2024 will be our revised note. As members of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, we shall promote the best interest of the school district as a whole and will make decisions that place student learning and the success of all students first by adhering to the following educational and ethical standards. As a board member, Mrs. Burton.
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their sex, race, color, national origin, religion, age, height, weight, marital status, handicap, disability, sexual orientation, sexual identity, or transgender status.
Mr.
Can you make sure they're okay with you?
Oh, yes. Does anybody wish to change anything in that bullet point?
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes, Mrs. Burton.
This is just grammatical, but can we remove the dash between regardless and of?
Yes. Okay. Okay, we will move on to the next bullet point.
I will be a personal advocate for the good work of the district.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. I will focus board action on policy making, strategic planning, and designating and evaluating the superintendent. Any changes? Okay. Mrs. Acosta.
I recognize that the role of the board is to govern and oversee the management of the district. I will delegate authority to the superintendent for the day-to-day operations of the district and will not seek to participate in the day-to-day operations. And the word will was struck through.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay. Moving on. Mrs. Bonifield.
Thank you, and I'm just going to read the updated version. I will review and evaluate all board policies, bylaws of the board, procedures and processes of the board, and will work to make desired changes so they will be current, relevant, and in accordance with state and our federal laws. When requested, I will review all administrative procedures brought forth and give input to the superintendent. However, the board does not vote to approve administrative procedures.
And that last sentence was
An addition.
an addition right there. When requested was an additional sentence. Mrs. Burton.
I just suggest that in that last line where it says, however, I would add, I recognize that. So it would read how, because these are all I will or I recognize statements. To make it consistent, I would put, however, I recognize that the board does not vote to approve administrative procedures.
That looks good. Is that agreeable with everybody? Mrs. Bonifield?
Because there's a semicolon there, can we just drop however? Mrs. Jarvis?
I would leave it.
Okay. Mrs. Jarvis says to
It's
leave
another
it.
sentence, yeah.
Very good,
go either
Mrs.
way.
Jarvis. Thank you. Is everybody okay with the insertion of
Yep.
I recognize the board does not vote to approve administrative procedures?
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving on. Mrs. Jarvis.
I will follow established board operating procedures.
Okay. Mrs. Burton?
I will come to board meetings prepared to discuss and take action on all agenda items. I will study the material in the board packet, seeking clarification if needed prior to each board meeting.
Anything? Okay. Mr. Johnson?
I will give the superintendent and board president notification of my concerns prior to the board meetings so that the concerns can be properly addressed.
Any? Okay. I understand that I have not only the right, but the duty to express my views and opinions and ask questions at the board table, and will make a good faith effort to understand the views of others. We struck out will.
I recognize that the board must make decisions as a whole in public. I will base all decisions on the available facts and my independent judgment, and I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to individuals or special interest groups.
And we struck out the word will. Okay. Mrs. Bonifield.
I will avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest, and if such conflict is unavoidable, I will disclose such interest and abstain from voting on such matters.
Mrs. Jarvis on the next page.
I will respect the consensus and support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
Okay. Mrs. Burton.
I recognize that while I am free to express my personal views, the board president is the spokesperson for the board and the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district.
Okay. We struck out the word will. Mr. Johnson.
I will be respectful and listen to all ideas presented to the board, be it from parents, staff, students, community members, other board members, or other stakeholders. I will listen and then refer any person to appropriate personnel.
I will communicate to other board members and the superintendent significant expression of public reaction to board policies and school programs. We inserted the word significant and we struck out the word of note.
I will exercise caution when communicating between and among board members, including electronic communication, and will abide by the Open Meetings Act.
Mrs. Bonifield.
I will hold confidential all matters that, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals, schools, or the district. I will keep confidential all information that is privileged under applicable law, including closed session discussions.
Mrs. Jarvis.
I will stay informed about current educational issues by individual study and through participation in programs providing needed information. For example, those sponsored by my state and national school board associations. I will share what I have learned with my Livonia Public Schools colleagues, formally or informally, so as to keep our board apprised of current issues and topics.
Mrs. Burton.
I will take no private or public action that will compromise the board, the administration, or the district.
Mr. Johnson.
I will refrain from using my board position for personal or partisan gain.
I will support the hiring of those persons best qualified to serve as district staff. Mrs. Acosta.
I will support and protect district personnel in the proper performance of their duties.
Mrs. Bonifield.
I, along with my fellow board members, will review, revise, and sign this code of ethics annually at the beginning of each calendar year. We struck will at the beginning, added will to prior to review, and then added in to specify that it's a calendar year event rather than a fiscal year event.
Thank you. Mrs. Jarvis.
As board president, I will ensure that persons addressing the board follow established guidelines as outlined in board policy.
Mrs. Burton.
I will advise persons addressing the board to do so in a respectful manner and not allow rude or indecent behavior, profane or indecent discourse to be directed to the board, superintendent, or others during board meetings. I will not permit disruptive behavior and will advise attendees as such. And if I could make one suggestion, even though I was the one that suggested the first phrasing of this, that we change as such to as needed. So that would read, I will not permit disruptive behavior and will advise attendees as needed.
Yes.
I like that.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
No? Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. I think that when we have the word as such, it sounds like we are going to tell people in advance what the expectations are, which we do every time we have a meeting when we talk about, for example, respect. If we say as needed, then we're only using that when we need to, if someone is being disrupted, instead of saying what those expectations are in advance.
Mrs. Burton?
At the beginning, though, it does say, I will advise persons addressing the board to do so in a respectful manner, etc. So it's saying that we will advise them to be respectful and not allow the rude, indecent, profane, etc. behavior. The only time we really address disruptive behavior is if and when it is occurring. I agree with your principle, but I think we've taken care of it in the very first few words of the first sentence, that I will advise persons addressing the board to be respectful.
I can live with that.
Okay. All right, so this last sentence will say, I will not permit disruptive behavior and will advise attendees as needed. Everybody's okay? Perfect. All right, Mr. Johnson.
I will ensure that all board members are given an opportunity to express their views. I will work toward building consensus among all board members.
I will follow parliamentary procedure to the extent that it does not conflict with board policy or state law. Okay, so these are our bylaws of the board, our code of ethics. We firmly believe in these. We work hard at following these, and I'm very proud of our board that we do this every time we meet. So these are great bylaws to follow, and we'll have a second reading, and then we'll go ahead and vote on them at our next regular meeting. And we won't have to reread them. This will be our fulfill our obligation of reading them. Is everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item 9D, the first reading of board policy, business management, EEB, wellness for students. And since it's a first reading, this evening we are going to hear from Mr. Etu.
Thank you, President Bradford and Board of Education. Yes, this is a first reading for Board Policy EEB, Business Management Wellness for Students. This policy is directly related to the procedures and guidelines and directives of Federal Act Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids. It's the Act of 2010. We review it occasionally to make sure that we are in compliance with that act. In doing so, we reviewed this board policy, EEB, and we just made two minor adjustments within the policy, and that is crossing off Livonia Public Schools school in that first paragraph. And then a few paragraphs down, we crossed off found and changed to identified. All other terminology and words within the board policy reflect that of the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which again gives us guidance in terms of nutrition education for pre-K through 12th grade, as well as nutrition standards, fundraising, physical education and physical activity opportunities, and other school-based activities in implementation and measurement, which does come from our district wellness committee, which will meet annually throughout the school year, and then have an annual report that will be published, as well as triennial progress reports. At this time, if there's questions, or if you would like, I can read it word for word.
Mrs. Bonifield.
I think we still need to get that identify as identified.
Yes.
I think that still needs to be updated.
And that dash.
Oh,
The
under
two highlighted
nutrition
items.
under
Yeah, under
nutrition
nutrition
standards.
standards identified in federal regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you said, is there a dash that we?
That dash is
Oh, the dash.
Where is it?
K-12.
Oh, K-12, under nutrition education, there's that pre-K dash 12. I think it's an extra long dash.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and you're gonna go ahead, Mr. E2, and read that into, or do we have to?
No.
We already have in the committee, the whole.
Okay,
Yeah.
guess we
Oh, I
don't
see.
have to.
Okay.
All right, everybody's okay with that? Okay. All right, moving on to item 9E, the first reading of board policy, students, JCEC, bullying prevention. And this evening, we are going to hear from Mr. E2 and Mr. Green, or just Mr. E2?
I'll take this one for now.
Okay, Mr. E2, thank
Go
you.
from there. Yes, this is the first read for JCEC, Students Bullying Prevention. This is another one that we do review occasionally to make sure that we're in compliance with the Matt Epling Safe School Law. The last time that law was revised was in 2017. In doing so, we created a bullying prevention task force that met periodically throughout the school year this year. And there was a few adjustments to the actual board policy and some removal of language. In that first paragraph, we added "and social emotional." In the second paragraph, we crossed off "control" and added "authority." We added the word "this" to the third paragraph. And then towards the bottom on page 1, we actually removed some redundant definitions that were in there a couple different times. That goes into page 2 as well, the A, B, C, and D. One area that we looked closely at is page 2, that first full paragraph that begins with "bullying includes." One of the areas that we removed from the board policy is the word "repeatedly" and "repeat it." The Matt Epling law does not use that terminology. So we will be working with our school administrators in terms of training them on what the new policy says and how to implement that accordingly with our staff and our students and our parents in the community. And then with the examples, we added "may include but are not limited to." And then E, we added "cyberbullying." And towards the end of page 2, we crossed off "teacher or counselor" and added "staff member," and also added "building" in front of "administrator." In the second to last paragraph, we crossed off "verified" and added "reported." In the last paragraph, we crossed off "verified."
And added reported. Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burton?
As Mr. Etu said, we discussed this at length in our committee of the whole. So if anyone is interested in more of the details of that very lengthy and very thorough discussion, you could go to our website. As President Bradford has referred to at the beginning of the meeting, go under the Livonia Public Schools website, go to the board tab, and you can drop down to videos of the previous meetings. So our committee of the whole meeting from last week gave a very, very lengthy discussion of this entire policy, in case anyone's interested.
Mrs. O'Quist?
Thank you, President Bradford. Mr. Etu, could you, I know we do not have to have approval of administrative procedures, but I think one of the most important things to come out of the bullying task force, the bullying prevention task force work, was the creation of entirely new administrative procedures. Could you just give the general gist of that and the purpose of creating those new procedures and what we will be doing regarding training?
Absolutely. Thank you, Superintendent O'Quist. Yes, the Bullying Prevention Board Policy, JCEC, previously did not have administrative procedures. Through our task force work, we made the determination to further comply with the Matt Epling Safe School Law to add administrative procedures, and we added 4 different steps. Step 1 is the opportunity for transition meetings between building administrators from one level to the next. So for instance, a lower elementary principal will meet with the upper elementary administrative team to discuss bullying concerns that may have occurred in the previous school year from that elementary school. So there are transition or bridge meetings that would occur at this point in time. Traditionally, we already have those, but we're just adding another layer in terms of the bullying prevention side of it. And then number 2, 3, and 4 in the administrative prevention, procedures for bullying prevention is for all employees, all students and parents in the community to be trained and educated on bullying prevention, what the policy is, and what we're doing within our school buildings to assist all those involved with it. And that'll be an ongoing training as well as a mandatory annual training to kick off our school year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Etu. Any
you.
questions or comments from the board? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Bradford. Mrs. Burden alluded to the lengthy discussion we had on the bullying prevention policy. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we have pretty in-depth discussion on all of the policy revisions and not just on that one. So again, if you want to watch it, you can go to our committee of the whole where you can see that. So I just want to make sure it applies to all policies.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That will be put on for a second reading at our next regular board meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's move on to 9F, the first reading of board policy personnel, GAA, goals and objectives. Goals and objectives, and we are going to be hearing from Mr. Abati.
Hello again. So this policy the original was written some time ago, and it just lays out the district's goals and objectives for personnel. We know certainly the board promotes and upholds the objectives for the district, but in terms of directly dealing with personnel, that is particularly an administrative function. So we rewrote the beginning of that and added the piece that from the district perspective rather than saying specifically from the board perspective. So when we're talking about attracting and hiring and recruiting and those kinds of things, would be specifically a function that would come out of the HR office. So we didn't want to necessarily say the board will be responsible for such. So we put that piece in there just to make it a little bit more accurate. But the rest, the goals that were there initially are good, but they're sort of had kind of a catch-all feel to them. We thought it would be a better look to make this match our shared vision and collective commitment. So that's what we did. We enhanced them a bit, and they cover specific things such as attracting, recruiting talent for the district, providing competitive compensation and benefits, promoting collaborative efforts among staff, adopting and implementing evaluation systems that promote growth, providing training and professional development, assigning personnel according to the needs of the district and students, and of course the personnel interests as well, and promoting staff morale. So it's a little bit more substantial than what we had before and a little bit more accurate to the way things actually function, but certainly keeping with the traditions of the district and the shared vision and collective commitments.
Thank you, Mr. Abadi. I just want to say this looks like such a much more thorough policy on this one for the goals and objective. I appreciate the how you wrote these out, so thank you for doing that.
Of course.
Any questions or comments? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I would just like to point out that part of our role on the board is to update and maintain our policies. And that doesn't mean that they were bad before, but sometimes we make them more specific or more granular or more targeted or update them to coincide with changes in the law and so on. This is a great example, just like the bullying one before. We had a policy, it was fine, but we're making it better, we're making it more pertinent. This is a part of the work that we do with the administrative team, and it takes a lot of time on their part too. So thank you to all the members of our team who keep trying to take a good thing and make it better. We do appreciate that.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Any questions or comments? Okay, this item will be put on for the next regular meeting for a second reading. GAA. Moving on to item 9G, the first reading of board policy personnel, GBN, the separation of certificated personnel. Thank you. Appreciate that. Certificated personnel. And let's see who's going to do this one. Oops. I lost it. Oh, Mr. Abate.
Yes, so
Sorry.
the original policy here
happened?
did read separation of certificated personnel, but the policy itself actually spoke to employment status as a whole, not just necessarily the separation piece of it. And we felt like it could read a little bit more. We didn't make really substantive changes here. We just felt like it would read a little bit more logically if we took that final sentence, which references the superintendent or designee's recommendations for reemployment, separation, probation, et cetera, if we led off with that line and then carried through to the end. So no real actual changes to the policy, just a more, we think a more accurate titling and a little bit more of a logical flow. But this is a policy that simply notes that the superintendent or designee will make recommendations regarding employment of certificated personnel, and that those will occur according to our collective bargaining agreements, Tenure Act, various applicable laws. And that, of course, we will notify our probationary and tenured personnel of their status by particular dates established by state law and our contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Abate. I do have a question. So that's going to be retitled, correct, to say employment status of certificated personnel? And that will be put on for the next meeting, correct? And that's why, because we have to make that change? Is that correct, that we can do that before we vote on it? You know what I'm saying? Am I not saying that right? You know, it's going to be titled employment status for certificated personnel?
Yes.
Okay,
And then next month will be the second reading and the voting.
okay. All right. Thank you. I hope I said that right. I feel like I didn't say it the right way, but Mrs. Burton.
Just for clarification, so are you asking in next month's meeting, it will still show up on our agenda as being titled separation of certificated personnel?
Correct, that's what
Yes,
I'm asking.
it will be, yes, it would still be called that because we hadn't voted to change the name
Thank you,
yet.
okay.
Yep.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at.
And then
there.
after the vote, it would show up in our bylaws with the new
It's
title
not
on it.
changed till we change it.
Thank you, that's what I meant. I wasn't saying it
Oh,
quite
okay.
correctly, but, okay, perfect. All right, that's gonna be put on the next regular meeting. All right, moving on to 9H, the first reading of Board Policy Personnel, GBQ, retirement system. And let's see, we're gonna hear from Mr. Abate again.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
He's doing all of them, thank you.
So in this policy, we simply had a little bit of outdated language regarding our retirement system. Of course, we don't administer that. It works through ORS with the state, but we wanted the language, of course, to be current. And so that's what we've done with a wonderful assist from Allison Smith to be certain that we were accurate on these particular pieces. But it gives a little bit of historical background on how the system was instituted, and then lays out, who administers the system, which is of course the state, and the fact that the district will make our required employer contributions. It's really just kind of informative about how the retirement system works.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, that will be put on for the second reading at the next regular board meeting. And we're going to go on to item 9I, the first reading of Board Policy Personnel, GBRA, physical examination of employees. And Mr. Abate.
Yes, so our original policy here simply noted that we have the right to require applicants and employees to submit to mental and physical examinations. That was, just a line that states a right of the district. We thought it would be appropriate to expand that out so that the board, the district, the readers of our policy would understand the circumstances under which we would require such a thing. We also suggested a tweak to the titling here as well, to say medical instead of physical. I think a more broad term that, and maybe a little bit more accurate in terms of what we would ask of folks, because we would send someone to a physician for this. And so it lays out the different conditions for when this might occur, and it also notes that the district will choose a physician for these particular instances for people to visit.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? All All right, seeing none, this will also be on for the second reading at our next regular board meeting. Okay, that completes the first readings for the board policies for this evening. We're going to go on to item 9J, hearing from board members. This time is set aside for any board member who wishes to speak before the board. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak? Mrs. Jarvis?
I just wanted to wish a very happy Passover to all members of our community who observe that holiday.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Any other board comments? Mrs. Acosta?
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board and the district as a whole for allowing us to continue our education and professional development. I know that sometimes I don't want to make the drive, and but Saturdays spent in Lansing learning and just reinforcing how great we are doing and how lucky we are to have each other as colleagues and working professionals. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. That was lovely. Mrs. Burton?
I was also at the conference on a different day, though, on Friday, so we could not carpool, unfortunately. But I would like to request that we add an item to our study session, on our next study session coming up, either next week or the week after, so that we can bring back a few of the highlights to share with our fellow board members.
Oh,
We'll add it to the agenda.
thank you, Superintendent Oquist. That's wonderful. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, is there any other business that we have to be brought before the board this evening? Seeing none, then we're going to go ahead and adjourn at 8:45 this evening. We wish you all a good evening. Thank you.